Yeah, it would be great, but it is not to be. Welcome to NOCLIP. I'm Chad Rowe.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kenny.
And today we're going to be talking about NieR Automata, which was developed by Platinum Games, published by Square Enix, and was released in 2017. NieR Automata is a hack-and-slash, beat-em-up, bullet hell, side-scroller, text adventure, Galaga-style shoot-em-up game.
You forgot action RPG.
Action RPG.
You also forgot by far the most important qualifier, which is an anime. It is an anime.
It is an anime.
Yeah.
As I believe, as we just loaded my save file, you may have noticed that it was titled Robot Anime Girl. So I'm hoping somebody eventually saw that on like a corpse somewhere and pulled that up. Had a robot anime girl fight with them.
Mm-hmm. This game has a lot of corpses.
Sure. I mean, none of them of people, so I mean, that's at least good.
Is it really a corpse if it's not a human being? That seems like a question that NieR Automata would have posed to us.
That seems like a question that would be central to this game's plot. However, I don't think it was ever asked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I kind of want to just go ahead and like endorse listening to another episode of our podcast, which was the Bayonetta episode, the last time that we talked about a Platinum Games game. And I remember talking about how that game has this issue with its like schizophrenic differences in kind, where it just sort of threw new shit at you all the time just to like break up in that episode we determined it was there to sort of break up the fun parts of the game with unfun, underdeveloped parts of the game. This game not only solves that problem, but I am comfortable in saying this is likely Platinum Games' like masterpiece. Ooh. And I cannot imagine, based on like how Platinum has developed games over the past 10 years, I can't imagine them making another game that I would prefer to this one.
Really?
Yeah, like I don't know. Like, something about it is just, this game's real good, and I've been so disinterested in everything else that they've ever made.
And I assume, since what you just said came from the mouth of one Chad Ruthermond, you are talking about this game from a very specific mechanical level.
Oh, hell nah.
Really?
Yeah, no, this game actually, by the third playthrough, the mechanics of this game kind of faded into the background, and I was way more interested in where the narrative was going, probably than any RPG I've ever played. Because RPGs have a tendency to, like, I feel like their stories are kind of overwrought, and I don't know, there's a lot of kind of garbage going on a lot of the time that doesn't make a lot of sense or make me care about it. But NieR kept that through line, like, the fact that they have you play through the game twice before you get new stuff in the third playthrough gives so much context to the game that it was like you're always kind of thinking about what is happening, and the different perspectives help sort of drive the intrigue. So I felt like this was a very well written game, and mechanically, honestly, like by the end of it, and I clearly should have played this on hard.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Like by the end of the game, I was just sort of like, okay, like I'll just press some buttons for a little while before I get to the next thing that I'm actually interested in.
Agreed. Yeah, mechanically, by the end of this game, playing on the normal difficulty for me as well, this game sort of devolved into like a pseudo Dynasty Warrior situation in a way that I wasn't happy with. But I agree with you that the thing that actually keeps you engaged, despite that, is like the tonal and thematic consistency of everything that's going on. And while I agree with you,
or inconsistency, which is actually the cool part.
Yeah, that there's this like huge intrigue layer that's like really subtly put through for the most part.
Right.
That's constantly referencing like the kind of terrifying themes that this game has. You can't deny that this game has a lot of hilarious bullshit. A lot of stuff where if you attempted to describe the narrative of this game, like from start to finish to your grandmother, there's absolutely no prayer that they would listen past like the first third when the alien invasion happens and then becomes irrelevant.
Well, technically speaking, the alien invasion happened like thousands of years ago. But I think, okay, so while I agree with that statement largely,
Yeah.
I think that the way that this game's narrative is structured, you could easily tell a story about this game's narrative to someone, and like that was a convincing length that you could like tell them was the full narrative of the game, where you leave out a lot of dumb things.
Yes.
And there's enough like of a like checkpoint to checkpoint narrative that could totally like sustain its own game in the middle of a bunch of kind of stupid stuff that occurs.
And that's what I'm trying to reference when I'm talking about this game's thematic consistency, is that a lot of what it's trying to do narratively is throw like they'll make a lot of excuses essentially for huge Platinum Games bullshit to happen that makes no sense and is completely incomprehensible to anyone that's outside of like the vague anime tones. Like if you're not willing to just accept that there's like a giant robot lizard monster that was
Right.
created by aliens that are trying to not attack the moon specifically,
Right.
You've got to let all of that bullshit fade into the background, because the point that they're trying to make oftentimes with that tone is that all of this nonsense that's happening, despite how incredibly bombastic and ludicrous it's all trying to be on terms of scale, is completely irrelevant to everyone involved, and like none of it matters, and the game's aware of that. And it keeps trying to like reinforce to you through repetition of what you're doing and the slow degradation of the world, and a lot of ways toning down of what happens between the playthroughs, that all of the bombastic, crazy nonsense is just completely irrelevant, and maybe everything's irrelevant. You're probably irrelevant. You know.
Well, there's some context given to your relevance that you actually, I don't believe are privy to. So, Andy, did you finish like the third playthrough and get endings?
I did not.
Okay.
I ran out of time, but I watched Chad do it, so
Yeah.
I feel like I've done it.
No,
I've already
actually,
played the game too when I have times anyway.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why Twitch exists. Continue.
my question is, just like as a brief aside that we'll come back to.
Yeah.
Did you play the second tower as
No.
9S? Okay. That was, to me, like the hardest part of the game, and I think we'll talk about that when we get to talking about the hacking specifically. But after completing the game 4 times, you have to beat the third part. You have to do the final boss battle a second time as the other character. And then you'll start the credits, and then the pods will come in. They'll interrupt the credits, and they'll be like, hey, talking to each other, not to the player. They do talk to the player eventually, but this is a long and story fucking like fourth wall break and all that good shit. Talking about how they have to erase the data of like 9S and 2B and A2 2A. I forgot. I don't care.
It's A2.
Yeah. And how Pod 4.2 has like developed a... Well, in addition to the pods, who are like supposed to be the strictly like not sentient version of robots, like the robot servants of other robots, have now developed a consciousness. 4.2 doesn't want to delete the data, and then the 9S's pod, whose number I don't remember, 153, is arguing with 4.2. That we have to delete the data, that's our, like, directive, whatever, Yorha's over. And you, as the player, keep selecting, like, no, don't delete it. And then you fucking pop out in the little hacking planchette.
Who is you at this point?
You are, I don't know, I guess Pod 4.2? I'm not sure. But you're the little hacking planchette, the little arrow.
Yeah.
And the credits start attacking you. And it's like a proper, like... 2D bullet hell where you have to destroy all the credits. Now, if you do destroy all the credits, you get to an ending. We'll talk about this now because it's so irrelevant to like the rest of the discussion. I just want to get it out.
Yeah.
If you die a whole bunch to the credits, which you will because it's really fucking hard, you eventually, like, the game will start asking you, like, because the first one it's like, do you want to continue? You say yes. Or it's like, do you want to not continue? It's a little cheeky because they want you to pick no.
Okay.
And so you pick no, and you keep playing, and then you die again, and the questions get more and more dire. They're like, is nothing worth it? Like, give up here? Are games silly things? Do you, like, it goes, like, deeper and deeper, basically being like, is what you're doing meaningless? And if you say no to that enough times, then you connect to the internet, and a bunch of other people show up and become like a shield in like a even more traditional bullet hell like style, like stream of lasers, and you like demolish the rest of the credits, and you get to the end, and then they basically pick up 2B and 9S's bodies and fly them to the location where they crash land after the tutorial, and they go like, repeating this over and over again is meaningless, and they're like, well, you can find meaning, and it is up to them to, like, break the cycle or whatever. So they just, like, throw in, like, by the way, this is a cyclical Soulsian situation going on here. But only after you beat the game 5 times.
Oh, okay.
And then they ask if you want to delete all of your save data, and if you do, then you become one of the helper guys for somebody else later in the future.
Like when they're going through the credits, you're
Yeah, you, like, if you choose to delete all of your save data, which it deletes your save data in all slots.
Yeah.
So you almost were unable to look at my save data because I was, like, debating whether or not to do this. It clears everything, and then later, eventually, someone would be playing the game, and, like, you get little messages from the people who have done it, and that'll show up. And then if they choose to ask for help, then your ship can come in. Like, there's a chance that you will roll on in and become one of the helpers.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Really, really crazy.
Yeah, like, super crazy.
God. What?
But the narrative beat, that last little bit on that whole tangent I just went on, is the important thing for this discussion.
Right. Indeed. Because it reveals that the games... Because by the end of the game, they were, even for people who didn't get that ending like me, trying to forward that no matter how, like, irrelevant or inanimate, I guess, or not conscious any particular given network or machine is, that, like, eventually it's going to be a thing that will matter. Like, even the most basic literal tools in this game eventually become things that get personified in some way.
Right.
Whether it be, like, those pods, or, like, a weapon literally becoming the thing that contains all of the memories of a person.
Which I'm so glad that they addressed that, because I remember reading
We
this...
talked about it before that we got to that point.
Yeah, I was like, how did the story segments that come up for the weapons... Like, where is this... Who was the author of this? Like, where did this information come from?
Yeah.
And then, when 2B dies, she drops the sword and is just like, it has my memories in it, Chad. Yeah. This is your explanation. Here you are. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah, because we were talking about it, and it was like, why do these weapons have, like, where's this data coming from? Like, how does my character know this? And I was like, well, maybe, like, people, like... upload their consciousnesses, like, into the weapons, or, like, copy their memories into it.
And it
like,
turns out...
Swish.
Yeah, nailed it. Which, as a totally premature segue, because I feel like we've not ventured all the way down any of these paths yet.
Well, we gotta accept, we can't. We
That's
cannot
true,
do that. Like, this is a game that was just like, let's name these...
Well, to speak to that, the reason I've been mostly quiet is because I feel like I have, like, incomplete thoughts on the narrative. Like, I haven't really digested it yet. But I find myself kind of feeling like this... I love a lot of the, like, what we've been talking about, like, the themes and, like, the cool, like, Kojima meta stuff, and, like, a lot of the stuff that they, like, places they pushed the game and things that they did with it. on a creative level, but I found that like the actual narrative itself felt a little threadbare to me for most of the game until like the end of the second playthrough. But we'll come back to that.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Well, I think a way to tie all that together, if you had a thing, by all means, I feel like we cut you off a little.
I think it's gone, whatever it was. So continue.
So as a way to sort of tie all that together, the way that Kojima makes games, right,
Yeah.
is that he will put in stuff that's like a meta or a fourth wall break or some kind of just like little like nudge to the player because Kojima wants you to be aware that you're playing a game. And sometimes that's important to the game, like the interpretation of the game, and other times it's sort of just Kojima feels like the game should be taken as its own thing. As like, you're playing a video game. Do you like Metal Gear Solid 3? Like, remember that you're in a game? Let's bring in the theme music while you're climbing this ladder as like a joke to remind you that you're playing a game and give you a chuckle. And we're also keeping it like geographically consistent. So there's like a reason for all this in this holistic package that is a game.
Yeah.
The way that this game is made is they do the same type of things, but they take it from the complete opposite perspective of you are playing a game, but they want to layer everything, like every layer of artifice that normally makes up a game is in the game for a reason. It is repurposed and repainted over to look as though it is a thing that your character is actually experiencing.
Yes.
You've got the main menu, you have those swords. The reason that I was curious about how I knew the story data is because nothing in the menu is ever explained as being anything other than like your character's head. Like you're thinking about this.
Yeah. There is a lot of I almost can't think of a circumstance in this game where some tiny little bullshit element that would just be like a menu prompt isn't at least attempted to be contextualized as someone, or like the pods at the very least, trying to make an active choice when they're going through circuits.
Right.
Probably my favorite moment was right after you start the second playthrough as 9S, when I realized that the game really was recording what you were doing when you were going through and setting your settings at the very first time. Like,
yeah, 9S does say, like, this is all being recorded.
Posterity,
yeah. Like, that was the moment when I finally started to take this game seriously, as silly as that is to say. Because the first playthrough of this game, as polished as it was, as much as the themes of, like, deterioration and sort of isolation and irrelevance were coming through, it got overwhelmed with me by a lot of the anime bullshit to an extent that I was just like, okay, these are good themes, but presented in a way that I've seen a billion times before, with doesn't have it seems kind of threadbare.
You also are totally baited into that mindset as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Like 2B's character design. We'll
come back to that later.
Well, we might. Like, it's so not as distracting in this game as you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I have completely conflicting thoughts on that.
Okay.
But we'll come back to that.
So we will come back to
Yes.
that. But yeah, you're totally baited into this game. From the moment the Platinum Games logo comes up on the screen, fortunately not preceded by the phrase, "from your naughty friends at," you're just like, okay, I'm in for an action beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Dumb game. And you were treated to something that is not that. I mean, it is still an action beat 'em up game. There are a lot more cogs in this machine than it leads on.
Yeah. The appeal, even in a lot of the final moments, is about character interactions and how you as a player reflect upon what's been going on here, especially in like the final significant choice that you make. But like, it's not like a lot of other dramatic JRPGs where the thing that you're playing for is like, you're gonna fight God! Like, there's some huge dramatic spectacle that you're going to reach at the end that's going to be your catharsis moment. That's the kind of thing that would be present in tons of action games, especially of that genre. but that's not like the final boss of this game, while mechanically interesting, is comparatively like it's not the spectacle that you kind of would be expecting. It's nowhere near on the scale of something like the giant ocean salamander monster. Like I had just kind of assumed, as soon as it was hinted by playthrough 2, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the moon. Like the game's going to end when I reach the moon, and I know I have to keep replaying this game over and over again until the moon arrives.
I believe you're technically correct in some ways.
Is that thing the moon? I mean, you're high in the air, but you're not moon high.
No, I think that you get shot into the moon if you choose 9S at the end and choose to go with them. I think you're just put into a data bank on the moon.
Okay.
But I think that is what happens as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is that the moon is not like, you're going to destroy mechs on the moon.
Right.
Like, it's like, oh, you're going to go to the moon for, like, eternal oblivion. And...
It's the complete opposite of the typical spectacle creep that's present in most RPGs. You have... you start out in a battle to save mankind. You later find out that mankind is dead. You later find out that you aren't even like a special robot. You're just like repurposed machine parts. Mm-hmm. And then you again later find out that there's nothing left to actually fight for. You've probably been killing things that have no you're not making an impact on anything. And then you end up killing one of your player characters. The scope keeps narrowing as it goes down to the fine point of eventually the only remaining things that you have any connection with on the planet are 2 dumb robot pods.
Indeed. It's not even like the Batman Gambit approach to a twist where you get to the end and are like, oh, everything that you have done has been part of our master plan. Like, it's more narrow than that. Because what's specifically happening is that you were created in order to provide this kind of strange evolutionary pressure on robots. Mm-hmm. Like, not in a way that, like, you've been manipulated. Like, you had no agency from the beginning. You don't have agency now. There's literally nothing you could possibly do, past, present, or future, to really affect any of this.
Right.
I really do like it. Your summary of that as scope narrowing into specifically the characters and themes that you're supposed to care about in this game is a fantastic way to put this.
Yeah, because that's the plot of the game. And I think that way more important than, well, I don't know. I was going to say more important than the plot. The plot really is what kept me going because, like, I love this sort of, like, borderline nihilistic sort of like existential narrative that happens.
Where they keep bringing up philosophers and call them bullshit and move on.
That does happen.
Yeah, it's really like the narrative of the game just keeps being subversive, but like in a very like not obvious way. Like it doesn't go so overboard that you're just expecting the opposite of everything you expect the whole time.
And like major plot developments are like given to you in like the most non-major ways a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's really a lot of like significant things are played down to the point that they don't even sink in until like minutes later.
Right. While you're fighting like a boss or something. Yeah.
It's like they mixed a more like I don't know what I want to say mature, but I don't think that's the right word. But like a more like subtle form of storytelling, but on top of a platinum game, and it's like this weird like meshing of things.
Like I said earlier, it's because everything about this game that you would expect from a platinum game, everything about this game that's analogous to Bayonetta, is all supposed to be this weird static on top of like the emptiness that you're supposed to be thinking about and caring about. That's partially why I think it's intentional that by the end of this game it becomes sort of a almost Dynasty Warriors-esque automatic button press game where you're just dodging a whole bunch, oftentimes getting automatic time slowdowns and tearing everything apart of you to shreds. Like it's literally so you don't have to engage on that level and can spend more time ruminating on how much none of the things that you're doing are relevant to anything alive or dead, and whether you being alive or dead matters, and whether there's anything to care about in the world, and all sorts of other great stuff.
Mm-hmm. In that vein, I want to talk about like what basically the first major sort of like twist that happens in this game, where after the first playthrough, you begin the game again as 9S, and 9S is constantly being introduced to these, I believe the game calls them like storybook segments, where it plays a little clip of a thing, and also as you progressively like destroy bosses and like get through things, you start to internalize and realize how early in the game 9S has internalized that robots are not like purely because in the beginning of the game, 9S is always like, don't listen to what robots are saying. Robots can't say things. Robots don't mean anything by these words.
Well, he always says that from start to finish. He just stops believing it or stops caring.
But he stops believing it so early in the game, and I feel like he does care, and I feel like it ends up leading to like the mental break of the third playthrough of the game.
That was the point that I'm meaning, is after
Right.
the break he doesn't care because he's a sociopath.
Right.
But but he has to care before that point for the break to occur.
Right. So the thing that this did for me, which I think sort of like sums up a lot of the my thoughts on playing this game, especially going in expecting basically nothing, is that playing through the first part of the game, you can be forgiven basically for everything that 2B has done, because you are none the wiser as the player. And then in the second playthrough, you realize that the whole time 9S has been like an active accomplice in this, when like he seems like the kind of person who would rather stop and think about it anyway. And then I came to the realization that, this game isn't a game where the player makes a choice or has an impact. This is a game... In 2018, that was a weird thing to feel.
Yeah.
I was suddenly like, I'm just doing this, and there's nothing that I can do to stop it aside from turning the game off. No choices really make a difference up until the last one. And you're just kind of along for the ride.
That's why the repetition is so important. And it was out of the context of the narrative, was a very cheeky and good decision of them to reinforce themes of repetition here. Because when you're playing through the game all these times and going through the same areas over and over again on side quests that are relatively similar over and over again, thematically different and interesting, but oftentimes the actual thing that you're doing is just like running out, getting an item, or interacting with a spot.
Right.
Everything starts to blend together that you're doing in a way that reinforces the themes that you were talking about. It's so good. It's so good the way that they approach this. A part of me wishes that they had been a bit more restrained with the platinum-y stuff. Only to give the game a wider audience, because a ton of people, I imagine, are going to look at the marketing of this game and look at, like, even if they buy in, play through the first chapter, and get to a point where they're like, okay, this is the same thing as all these other things, and it's not really for me. And they're never really going to... And they might get hints as the hints that are ever present in this first game, but they're never really going to get to the meat and potatoes underneath the static.
I mean, for what it's worth, the game is mechanically still a beat-em-up from start to finish.
Yes.
Barring its, like, let's do other stuff moments.
Even its let's do other stuff moments, and this is the reason specifically why I think it's better at trying to do those differences in kind than something like Bayonetta, are all anchored in exactly the same mechanical toolset for the most part.
Yeah.
Like,
Your for example, your bullet hell ship can still punch a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was honestly my favorite part about the camera perspective shifts, is that they were able to do something that felt noticeably different as a player and what you're going through by literally just shifting your perspective and nothing else. Not the enemies that you were fighting, not your tool set. It was a strange feeling to go through and know that, like, something as simple and really meaningless as going from a side scroller game to a top-down game was enough to switch things up to that extent.
Yeah, and they used the camera shifts in like every type of gameplay is what made it work so well. It's because like that you would just be playing as 2B or 9S or whatever, and it would shift camera while you were just fighting enemies regularly, and then when you're the Gundam ship, the flight unit,
That's it.
It will also switch camera angles in the same way, and it that consistency across the different types of gameplay make them all feel seamless.
They tailor everything around it so well to allow for those, because you end up with like the one that stands out to me, like one of my favorite moments of like visually in the game, which we'll get into next if we want. But is there's a moment where you're going through the factory and
which time?
As 2B.
At the beginning?
The second. Okay. There's a moment at the end of the first playthrough where you return to the factory, and you start out onto this like catwalk, and you fight some guys, and you're in a 2D perspective.
Is it the We Become Gods scene?
Yeah, it's right after the first big fight.
That's that whole chapter, or whatever you want to call it.
And you go through the first like little grain silo, which I assume doesn't store grain in this world.
It stores nuclear missiles.
Yeah. And then you go through that and come out on the other side, and then the camera pans back a little bit, and then you fight some more guys, and then you continue along, and then you keep panning back to the point where you can no longer see your character, and it's just like huge silos everywhere, and the camera slowly moves along this walkway while like you still hit the attack button, but it doesn't matter anymore because like you can't see anything that's happening. That whole moment was so well played that they used the camera perspective to, one, allow you to still play the game. You can still play this game while it's doing this. And two, give you this like sense of vastness to the space that you're in.
Yeah. Continuing to minimize all the occurrences and things that are happening around you. Did you go into the menu enough to realize that among the many other silly references, the robot that is broken, whose head rolls off, that they're all worshipping as the person who became God, that robot is named Kierkegaard, of course?
No, I actually didn't see that.
Interesting.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the other ones, you probably knew Engels, the broken down robot, but yeah, the giant.
Engels is apparently just like the generic name for the Goliaths, like the big guys with the thresher hands.
Yes.
But yeah.
And hilariously, the name of the robot that's just a thresher hand, like the giant buzzsaw arm, is Marx.
Oh,
and that's it. So there,
that seems thematically appropriate.
Indeed,
actually,
yeah, for Viscant's representation of Karl Marx to be like a gigantic buzzsaw destroyer.
Just like a trench digging arm.
Industrial tools, good. So much bullshit like that all over the place.
Yeah.
What was one of the 900 things we wanted to talk more about?
The thing that I wanted to say is how that moment of the camera panning back was such a like interesting, cool visual moment for me that it almost made me forget how visually boring this game is all the time.
What?
Like, the game is beautiful, and I think that it thematically makes sense that everything is sort of muted because you're a robot. And it's like, because you aren't supposed to appreciate the beauty of the world as your characters. But like, running around through these like mostly empty, garbage-strewn wastelands with the same sort of like grays and browns really just like made it difficult for me to like find my way around places because I was just like so disinterested in what I was looking at.
I think you're doing the color green a huge injustice here by neglecting its almost constant inclusion in lots of the environments.
That is true.
I wanted to specifically point out how this is a game in the great and infinite, I assume, for the foreseeable future until we figure out how AI works trend of desolate, destroyed landscapes in video games.
Sure.
It is not just Gears of War brown. It's like,
less Gears of War, it's more Last of Us.
Yeah, yes. I was going to say that.
Yeah.
The main city feels like that city from The Last of Us with the giraffe.
Right.
But it feels...
Salt Lake City, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like that in the Last of Us way in terms of level design, where you can tell that it's like a beautiful, destroyed, post-human being landscape that you're moving through on like a linear path, because a lot of these are open spaces that you have a lot of freedom to move around in. And because you have that much freedom and everything's so empty, it ends up feeling like if that sort of aesthetic was something PS2 games constantly tried. This game is weirdly... Can you guys explain to me why this game feels like a PlayStation 2 game?
I could attempt it. Chad and I were having a semantics debate, or not really a debate, discussion about the definition of open world game and how people use it.
Yeah.
And Chad referred to the game as an open world game, and I did not. Because I feel like an open world game is a game with a completely connected map, like a Skyrim or a Final Fantasy 15 or whatever, or The Witcher, and a game like Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess or something like that, where it has some big zones, but then are connected by little trunk paths, through some mountains or
trunk paths
through
solid.
A tunnel or something. That's it's delineated by a linear path.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would not refer to that as an open world game, and this game has a lot of that, and a lot of older PS2 era games have that kind of world design.
Right. And I think that
I think that might be part of it.
Yeah.
While I disagreed with your definition of open world and consider this to be an open world game, which really, if you don't consider this an open world game, then my primary criticism of the game itself probably doesn't hold a ton of weight.
Mm-hmm.
But the sense of it being a play, I think Super Bunny Hop referred to it as this felt like a nostalgic game, and how it felt like it was a game from the PS2 Japanese era.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not alone in this then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I love you, George, but I think that because it is 2017 when this game comes out, there are so many better ways to do open world than this. And I felt like the just go from point A to point B, you don't have to fight anything. In fact, it's not even a challenge to avoid things. You just keep moving and they won't hurt you. As evidenced in the scene where you can't fight back and you still can just walk basically unmolested to the bridge and die on the other side. I didn't get a nostalgic vibe from this, probably because I didn't play a lot of the games that this game is nostalgic for. Mm-hmm. I just kind of found the open world itself to feel a little bare and also didn't look super engaging.
Well, it's absolutely bare. It falls... Because this game uses a quest design to structure all of the things that you're going to encounter, which I think works to this game's overall benefit because it allows them to build specific narratives into the quests. If you could just organically find anything at any particular time, it would be harder for them to do the narrative beats in the correct order that you need to.
Right.
But this is not a game which I think is something, especially in the modern day, that's super core to open world design, where you find accidentally things that are cool that happen in the open world. It's a game where you're going around and you have to go to the place with an intent. You have to go to a quest giver first, and then you go out to do the quest.
Right.
You don't stumble upon anything for the most part. There's very few surprises in store for you other than some of the hidden chest areas and secret weapons.
Yeah.
But those are few enough and far between that they feel more like Easter eggs in a PS2 game than they do natural shrines or something in a Zelda game.
Yeah, and that's another. I think that's what started our discussion. Was I commented on how I felt the side quest system or whatever you want to call it implemented in this game felt out of place for the kind of game it was,
right,
to me, because I was it's got open world style quests, but it's not really an open world RPG.
It's not a sandbox.
It feels like it's grafted that modern quest design onto a PS2 air quotes kind of style feeling game.
For the record, I'm totally with you on the description of the level design, and I would like to propose a universal descriptor for what we're talking about
I
here.
would love a term for it.
Yeah, big rooms, real big rooms. I think it's the big room section of design,
like zones.
Maybe, but I think even zones implies more space than what we're trying to suggest here.
I don't think that if the NOCLIP podcast is going to coin a term in game design, I do not want it to be
big rooms.
Real big rooms games.
Not real,
to
just
be
big
fair,
rooms.
To be fair, like actually designing the levels in like a level editor, like an engine, they are referred to as just rooms.
That's true. Yeah.
So they are just big rooms.
They're just real big rooms.
That is actually a fairly accurate term. But
I don't know. I found in that same vein, talking about those side quests, not only did the side quest structure feel inappropriate for this game, because it feels like an MMO structure.
Yeah, and it also clashes with 2B as a character. Like, she would not give one fuck about doing most of those side quests.
Right. At least the way that she's I don't know.
The ending
gives a little bit of a weird tone to the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, she does have a character arc.
Yeah.
Where she starts to care more, but it's more that she just cares about 9S than anything else.
And a lot of the problems with that character arc is that most of the growth is implied to have already happened off screen a long time ago.
Right.
But it would have, I think, felt more thematically appropriate if the side quests unlocked when you started your 9S playthrough. But then it wouldn't make any sense because you didn't do any of those things on your first playthrough, etc.
Well, you do a lot of things differently, and I think it's implied to be chronologically accurate that you play through the game 2 times doing exactly the same stuff, but in a slightly different way. Mm-hmm. And it's also implied, of course, that 2V is a robot that's just supposed to kill 9S over and over again because she's an execution unit, like in that side quest. With the execution unit in the parking garage. And the reason that this all ties together so fucking well, thank you everyone for engineering this beautiful conversation arc, is that I feel like the side quests, for the most part, were uniformly unentertaining and just bad, but almost uniformly had this little narrative nugget that made me happy I did any of the ones that I did.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Every single side quest was go to this location, maybe fight some robots, come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite one that I found was in the forest, where it was this little side area I noticed had a little red dot on it on the mini-map, and I was like, oh, what's over there? So I went over there, and there was a little shack, and some animals there, and then a robot who's just a robot ranger essentially. He had a hood on with a cape, and he's do not hurt the animals. And then he just attacks me, and it was when I was playing as 9S, so I was fighting him for a little while, and I was I don't want to kill this guy. I think this is an interesting scenario that I found, so I hacked him, and then that just made him stop attacking me, and then he was do you agree to not hurt the animals?
Do you agree to not hurt the animals?
Do you
Robot 9S. Animals. Android 9S, do you agree to not hurt animals? And I was yeah, I won't hurt the animals. And he was cool. You can come back here anytime. So I just made friends with a cool robot ranger. They're just so, it's so weird. There's just a robot, that's... There's a lot of little charming things like that. Every once in a while you'll hit that little side quest that has something really interesting like that.
But it's not the game design component of that that's cool.
No,
it's the
not
narrative
at all.
nuggets
Yeah, it's just
that
that was completely unexpected.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Probably my favorite narrative element of these side quests that seems like an almost universal theme is how at the end of almost every side quest, or at least every that I can think of after playing through the full game 4 trillion times or whatever the game forces you to do, is that at the end of a side quest, the character who you're trying to help is almost universally less happy. Like, everyone,
Yeah.
no matter what the outcome is, and it's not just necessarily always stuff that's, like, outside of your control or something, or stuff like, oh no, it just failed, you went there and the guy was dead. Like, sometimes you succeed in the quest, and you, like, bring them the thing that you want, and then you're like, oh no, they're gonna use that thing to, like, wipe my friend's mind.
Yeah.
Everything seems to be getting worse from a side quest component.
Yeah. It even, like, it functions exactly like that as well through the overall narrative of the game, because the side quests, as you progress through the main plot, are more and more likely to have a negative outcome.
Yeah.
Like, everything that I did near the end of the game was like, everyone who participated in the quest is now dead. Everyone who participated in the quest is now a murderer. This person's wondering why they even exist. This person has, like, an existential crisis and throws themselves off of a bridge.
Yeah.
It's like, it kind of enforces the don't do any side quest thing that I think is the way to make the game enjoyable.
Yeah. I found myself not doing very many of them. Like my first, like, 2B playthrough, I did like them at the beginning, you know, like you'd have to do the blacksmith side quest and, like, whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's not bad. These side quests are okay. And then, like, I did a few more of them, and I'm like, I'm not really engaging with this part of the game very much.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of stopped doing them unless they were convenient to do. Mm-hmm. And then by the time I started my second playthrough, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done more of the side quests. Because I feel like I was missing a lot of, like, bits and pieces of the narrative and stuff. Right. And then I was like, exact same thing on the second playthrough. Like, I was like, I did some more side quests that I didn't do the first time, and I'm like, oh, I'm not really engaging with this part. Yeah. Like,
yeah, that's, I believe at the end of all playthroughs, like every piece of content that I've touched in this game, I ended with a quest completion percentage of 29%.
I say that's probably like double what mine is.
Yeah.
Like, I did not do very many of them.
And like of that, I'm super happy that I stumbled upon one particular one, which was the parking garage memories one.
Oh yeah,
because that one like actually gives you some understanding of the narrative before the twist, the third or fourth twist, whenever that is. This game has more twists than Super Hot does. Mm-hmm. At the end, where like if I hadn't done that side quest, I feel like it would have just been like, all right,
exactly.
Like,
yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? Who cares? They're like, oh, the original designation was 2E or whatever she says. Mm-hmm. I'm like, ooh,
to execute.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I just wanted to say about the one thing I really liked about the side, or the maybe not the side quests, but the main quests and maybe some of the side quests, is that like the quest giver will just seem like a generic NPC and then become like significant to the plot. Right. Like Pascal does, and then I don't remember their names. The pink-haired
Popala and Devila.
Yeah, mm-hmm. They become significant in the third playthrough, and you're like, oh, like I don't know, that really like stood out to me as cool that these seemingly like unimportant characters ended up being important to the narrative.
Yeah, and even like because like if you just look at the people walking around in the resistance camp, they all just kind of look like some guys walking around in the resistance camp.
It seems similar to guys, yes.
Yeah, and but if you talk to them and like when they are quest givers, which cycles in and out depending on when you talk to them, they all actually like each of these people has like a personality. Mm-hmm. Like somebody thought this out and wrote it in. They were like, okay, this is this person, and then if you do their quest, you can kind of learn more about them, which isn't unique to this game, but it is unique. This game has a unique perspective on how it takes like androids and stuff, because everyone's just kind of treated that way as just like, you weird robot, like they speak about it. Well, like, we're just going to be sent here to be destroyed and fight.
When I first showed up there in the game, I thought that they were people,
right, like
and not
humans.
androids. Yeah, and I quickly realized that was not the case. But
one guy likes, can you give me some leg parts?
Yeah,
I need leg parts.
I thought that the two people with the robot heads on would end up like doing something other than just like telling you how the game works. Like that design stood out to me as interesting. I just thought that they would like do anything,
right?
Like give you a quest or something.
I don't know. There are a lot of little things in this game that never had payoffs, at least from the amount that I saw of it, that was surprising. The biggest one for me by far is the like terrifying sphere face horror zone in the desert. How nothing ever happened. There, no quest that I found went there.
Sphere-faced horror zone.
Did you ever literally just like walk around the desert, just like try to like, let's see how far I can go in the desert?
I went through the sandstorm and got to the oasis, but that's all I happened.
If you follow the leftmost path, if you hunker against the sandstorm on the left side when you're leaving the oasis,
okay,
you just go straight. I forget the name of this character. I think it's Emil, the guy with like the weird face. That's like the creepy smile.
Like the NieR mascot.
Yeah, the NieR mascot guy.
Yeah.
There's you'll reach a bunch of those heads, like exactly that face, of varying sizes, including like gargantuan ones that you stand on top like buildings, just like in the desert, just together.
Yeah. I believe that those actually do have a side quest and an ending related to them.
Oh, geez.
If my like reading is correct.
I somehow did not ever find those.
Well, they're not super hidden, but like...
No, you described them as the size of buildings.
Yes, but like...
They're not visible.
They're in a desert, and
right,
sand
so
dunes are like...
dunes.
Okay, yeah, sand dunes are like stories high.
Right.
So you wouldn't see them, and you have no reason to just randomly explore,
right,
or even go to them for a quest that I found.
I always felt like I should explore the desert more, but then did not because it was huge and empty.
And visually really boring. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like my main complaint.
Yeah.
That
I
the
found the tar pit and the oasis, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And also, because we've talked about side quests for a while now, I want to point out that I did not follow this trend of side quest ignoring. I think my completion was like 88% of side quests.
Oh, good lord! How did you like?
I agree with you guys broadly on your stance on their quality and narrative utility, but little mechanical utility.
Mm-hmm.
I was constantly afraid of missing, not narrative beats, although I'm glad that I got them, but weird little environmental beats, which seem to be a strange theme in the level design of this game. No matter how many times I kept coming back to these zones, and it was a lot of time you go through the same places in this game, especially if you do all the side quests.
Right.
It seems like every, I don't know, fifth time I'm there, I'd actually find something new, hidden, and surprising. That's not like a huge compliment. It's not like a Zelda situation where you're like, every time you're there, you're going to learn something new about the world that you're inhabiting. No, it's not that. It's much worse than that. It's like 1 in 5 times you're like, there's a huge underground section to the opening part of the desert? Like, what is this?
I found that immediately upon getting there. There's a part on the mini map that stood out to me, so I walked over to it and looked down, and there was a path, and I'm like, oh, cool cave.
Yeah.
There's actually 3 entrances.
There are. I found
a
second entrance later.
Yeah. I kept finding more of those hidden doors whose meaning I also never got or understood.
You mean the 9S doors?
Can he hack into those doors?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If they have that little thing on them that the chests do that he can open.
No, not that. There's the doors with the robots that are like, I'm sorry, you can't open these doors.
I never figured out how to get into those.
Yeah.
Me either.
I kept finding more of those
My
in
guess
hidden areas
was
that I'd already been to.
You had to go there as A2 or something, but then I never tried to do that as A2.
Nope,
so.
it doesn't work as A2.
I tried it. You can't. There's a button. I assume something will activate the button, but I don't know what it is.
Whatever. But yeah, the point is that I was afraid of missing stuff like that, where there were actually weird... Because you go through the same environments in this game so many times that I was like, if there's actually weird hidden variation in these environments, because the game did continue to surprise me, it just didn't do it very often,
right.
I wanted to experience it.
Yeah.
So I tried to do every side quest that I could.
I felt that pull, too, that there were, I could feel it. While I was playing the game, that there were, cool environmental storytelling details, but they were, so far and few between and hard to notice that I just I felt pulled in 2 directions. I was like, I don't really care, but then I kind of do.
It could be cool.
Yeah, it could be cool.
Yeah.
Potential coolness.
Yeah, I got caught up in sort of the eventual I just got drawn along by the main game so much that it just never really occurred to me to even try and find that stuff. But we're gonna take a break, and then when we come back from break, then we can start talking about some of this other stuff.
Like butts?
Oh, you're talking about butts.
Good.
We'll definitely talk about butts. I have a lot to say.
Stay tuned!
Welcome back from the break.
Where we talked about very classy and important things.
Only. And now, we're going to talk about butts. Or, we're going to talk about character design and how I thought that at the beginning of this, I mentioned that I felt like 2B's character design was actually not distracting in a way that I thought was unique to this. But I guess you disagree.
Yeah, on the Bayonetta episode, I had talked about how the choices with like how they wrote the character and the character's personality of Bayonetta went a long way towards making like the sexualization of the character like palatable to me. Because she's like very much in control of her sexuality and everything.
Yeah.
And is like a dominate. It's like it's thematic to the character.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't even palatable to me for Bayonetta. Like, I actively enjoyed her characterization.
Yeah. But in this game, like, 2B is like a like commander combat unit with like no personality, and she's like a sexy anime robot in like a
Maid is
like
the word you're
kind of
looking
like
for.
a maid dress, but almost like she looks like she's going to a masquerade ball or something.
Right.
Like it's a nice character design. I mean, apart from the fact that the dress has like a slit that goes like up to her stomach up the side of it, and it's so short that like you don't even have to move the camera at all. Just like when she runs, you just see her ass.
There's that great moment during the finale of the second playthrough because you're controlling 9S, but 9S gets like fucking obliterated at the end of it, and she has to kill him. And we're sitting there watching it, and Andy was just like, "Can you like move? Like, do you have control?" Because like the angle was weird.
Yeah,
it's the second time when you are 9S,
right?
So and 2B is walking over to you.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, so this is weird. This would be a thing that I'd be able to control. So I tried like moving the control stick. Like 9S doesn't do anything. I moved the right control stick, and the camera just like serendipitously just like went, and the whole screen. 55 glorious high dynamic range ultra HD 4K image of 2B's ass just appears.
Yeah.
On the TV.
It's just so weird. And she's like wearing like a thong. Like
yeah, it's like a white bodysuit.
Yeah, but like it's like when you remove that element of like her being a dominatrix is like part of her character, like with Bayonetta, and it's just like wish fulfillment. She's like basically a fantasy sex robot for whoever like designed her.
Exactly.
Yes.
This is, you can't remove the human element because I think what they're going for, and albeit this is the most like if we're talking about this as a value judgment generally, I think obviously it's being done to cater to the predominantly male 18 to 24 market that video games are typically marketed toward.
Yes.
However, thematically in game, I totally look at the robots we have now. 50% of them are like, sex robots. The other ones assemble your car.
But she's supposed to be designed for combat, and she's like, in high heels and a dress.
She really knows her way around those high heels. Though she sprints at like 40 miles an hour.
Yes. Like in the tutorial,
get you a girl that does both.
Yes, get you a girl that does both. But like it's so egregious, and like in the tutorial, she's like a set up to be like a higher ranking member of like the military, and like she's like flying in like with the special forces and her like Gundam flight unit, and then she like crashes it and jumps out. Then she's in like a sexy anime dress.
Yeah,
like it just doesn't make any sense at all.
This is correct.
And then it's so like it stands out so much to me that it feels like 9S should have assless chaps on or something. like I mean, even like A2, who is not wearing a sexy dress, like it feels like they took special care and effort to like how her ass was modeled and how it looks while she runs.
Yeah, I think
because like 91% whatever percent of the game, probably 99.9, it's a perpetual upskirt of 2B while you're playing.
Yeah. There's so much open world running where you have nothing to do.
You're just looking at her ass the whole time.
I did defend 2B's design because I didn't feel like it was particularly distracting. A2 is in the opposite boat. I feel like A2 is just like an ass machine. Like, she exists only, they were just like, what would happen if 2B just wasn't wearing a skirt instead?
Yeah, like, she's like, just dressed like she's going to the gym or something. She's got those little shorts and like a tank top.
No.
Everybody has the same, uniform, we're gonna call it, despite our best efforts not to. Despite that it obviously isn't a uniform.
Yes.
And I think because she has the same stockings that 2B wears, but doesn't have the boots. And she also is wearing, I think the bodysuit, but torn.
Or you've got to zoom in on her, because this is actually interesting. 8.2's design, in the realm of how do we justify the inclusion of a ludicrously sexualized character design.
Correct.
She falls in, the quiet angle of, extreme sexualization, extreme levels of justification for it.
Okay.
And that is, if you zoom in close enough, almost, because they're all, if you look at the androids that are destroyed in the ground, they're mostly decayed and are now the equivalent of what would be skeletons if they were human.
Yeah.
You can see lots of the exoskeleton that's sort of this gray color and lots of these black internal parts and shit.
Yeah.
A2 looks like she's wearing lingerie, but is in fact, if you look very closely, you'll notice that's underneath of her skin. That those are parts of her that have ripped off. And that those are the internal components that are broken, and that it's underneath her skin is the black part, and it just coincidentally looks exactly like lingerie if you zoom out from it. I know this because I was in Huntington. I was playing this with Rachel. And so, for the whole time while I was just going through and doing stuff. So, she's sitting there, was just why is there just a nude woman on screen literally constantly? and I had the wonderful moment of being well, actually, that's really her internal robot flesh.
Yeah.
It was very
You
fun.
just have to mansplain the
Indeed, yeah.
the sexy robot.
I got to lean into it really hard and happy. Yeah. But. And my huge butt on all of this, because we have...
Is A2's butt.
Yeah. We've deservedly been ragging on a lot of these decisions. There are two angles to this that they tried to use as justification for the inclusion of that model. And it's like I said, it's a very pretty character design. The box art for this game is something that I legitimately think is it's very close to my perfect nerd aesthetic. I need to come up with a name of this. I think I talked to a guy that you guys don't know long ago, and he called it motorcycle chic, and I don't know what that means because I don't know anything about fashion.
Right.
But
it's called chic as well.
Sure, that's whatever it is. It's so close to what I would want as this perfect nerd design of a thing, and they've slapped on the sexualization on top of it to make sure that the ass is ever present.
So hold on, just to be as holistic about this as possible.
Yes.
The box art of this game is 2B and 9S. Maybe we have different. The thing that I'm picturing is them standing on the big pile of broken robots.
Yeah.
And 9S kind of hunkered down underneath of it, and 2B standing up there with the sword, just standing straight up.
I'm thinking of the one that's 2B holding 9S and A2 looking like an animal in the background.
Oh, I don't think I've seen this art.
Whatever.
I've seen the one that looks like it's an homage to the original Doom art.
Whatever. We're talking about art on a podcast. That's fine.
It's important.
It is, but they're all beautiful, and I have complete faith that they're all really gorgeous. But there is no narrative justification immediately for what anyone's wearing or why she would wear it. It makes no sense.
This is the cover art.
Okay, thank you.
But there's thematic and tonal. There's two thematic and tonal things they do with it that I think are interesting. One's a lot more subtle and I think less meaningful than the other. The first, I think they try and use it as a way for you to subtly dehumanize the character, in a very literal way.
They were here, objectify her.
By the way, she's a robot,
so it's okay.
We didn't even use 2B.
if it should please you.
Whatever.
We're agreeing with your point.
Yeah, you are. But the reason I was calling it subtle is because there's no reason in the game that they're explaining this. There's no entity that would be like, we want to dehumanize them by making them sex robots.
If it was a Kojima game,
yes,
there would be.
Exactly.
But there's not.
Good example of the distinction between these two crazy person auteur styles. But the second thing is something that I'm sure we're...
Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
The Day 1 edition cover art?
That might be it. It's whatever comes up on the PS4 when I go to load the game.
Oh, this comes up on the PS4 when I load the game.
Same for me.
Yeah.
Weird. But anyway.
But the second thing is something that I'm sure all of us are aware of, which is so that there's payoff to the you want to fuck 2B line, which I do think is sincerely an excellent line, and that may actually stop to reconsider that like might actually be deeper reasons for her character design and all of the Yora character designs looking like this.
Because 9S is supposed to have like this arc where he falls in love with 2B.
If you'd call it love.
It is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean. But
yeah. It's to pay off that there's something there later as 9S continues to be the most advanced, most humanoid-like robot, that he's possessing the same kind of strain. It's throwing in your face like the weird primal feelings that having an ass in your face is supposed to constantly listen that like no one will ever talk about in media.
Right.
It literally is just like, you want to fuck this thing. And I loved that moment, both as a part of 9S's character design and as the player going through this game, just being like, whoa, I didn't expect you to address that.
I also really like that moment, but I don't know if I want to give them enough credit to say that they like planned that out ahead of time, or if it's something that they were like, oh, we could do this because we have like a super sexy character running around all the time.
Right.
It's similar to what
given their track record.
True. It's similar to what I said in the first half about the game's themes of repetition being used well.
Yeah.
It is worth noting, by the way, that this is not like a Hideki Kamiya fronted game. Like he was not like going, no, higher. Like,
that dress is not short enough. Like they had like tights on her, and then he was like, "Can we get rid of that?
Yeah, you take that down.
Yeah, can we get rid of the tights and like put a thong on it and make the dress short?"
Right.
And then he leaves. That's the only thing. Like, he came to the studio once when we were working on the game, and that's what he did.
Yeah. I'm going on lunch, and then he just never came back.
He took a screenshot and then like went never returned.
Speaking of 9S and assless chaps as a huge back-reaching and present tangent, did you guys ever find and purchase the dress module from email?
No, I didn't.
There's a thing you can do that unlocks like alternative costumes for the characters,
right.
Or it's like a little robot. The pod will put up like a hilarious little screen, and they'll change. But every time they change, I've never done it with 2B, so I don't actually know what hers even is. But because you only get it in, at least I only found in interactive with email on 9S's playthrough. But when it literally it takes some article of clothing off of the characters, and it's very minimal for both 9S and A2, because A2 has literally one piece of clothing to remove, which is that weird Shaw thing on her stomach, and
right.
It doesn't really make much of a difference to the design. But 9S's version of the dress module is you take it off and he just removes his pants. He just doesn't. He has the weird like huge anime overcoat thing that sort of functions as a pseudo dress without the context of the pant shorts. So they just remove the pant shorts, and it's really great.
I do love that 9S wears shorts though. Like it's very amusing and like
I think it serves to make you like not like him in the beginning. Like I jokingly referred to him for like the first couple hours of my playthrough to him as like 2B's bitch boy.
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
Like, and I think that's the way they want you to see him.
They want to infantilize him. They want him to seem unimportant and not really that big of a deal.
And then by the end of it, he's like easily my favorite character.
Yeah.
I don't think I have a favorite character. That's something I'd have to think about.
I don't think any of the characters are in this game, truth be told, are actively good in either a moral or like as character sense. I would
agree with that.
Yeah, it's the themes around the characters that really make me like everything that's going on here.
9S does the most for the story.
Yes. 9S's development is by far the most important because he's the closest thing to a human being that exists here, and he has most of the pieces to the puzzle. So you can see how assembling the puzzle destroys him. But he's still a crazy person who does things that make no sense.
If you want to... if we're done talking about butts... Which I know.
think we are.
I think, I think I've gotten the butts off my chest.
Cool. That's good. That's good. I call it, it's like sleep paralysis. Somebody's sitting on your chest. I'm glad we got that off. Now you can... Anyway. Honestly, there were, like... I remember, because you go through this game so many times, and I played so much of this in the presence of Andy, that, like... we ended up making the same jokes, like, over and over again. Yep. Because the same moments would pop up on screen. So, like, the dude was like, oh, is this death? I'd be like, oh, I hate it. Death sucks. It's the worst. I made that joke, like, 5 times. Because, like, that scene plays out.
And, like, the part where we mentioned where it's like, you want to fuck 2B, don't you? It's like, Chad was like, oh. They read my mind.
Yeah, like this game is great for making the exact same joke over and over again. Yeah. So we're gonna move past the butts because it's gonna devolve into that.
Yeah.
The other thing that makes you hate 9S is that 9S is not fun in this video game to play as.
You really miss the loss of the heavy weapon attack that much?
Oh, the fact that it goes from a hack and slash game with combos into a game where it feels terrible to use your weapon and is more efficient and better to take a break from the game to play a different game for 3 seconds, watch a screen come up, play game, screen goes away, time slows down. It just, like, for me anyway, like the added, like, salt in the wound, where they're like, hey, watch this guy explode for, like a second and a half of just, like, that's uneventful and usually doesn't even kill the thing. It makes 9S feel super terrible to play. I think he's great in boss fights, because they do interesting things with him in boss fights.
Yes.
But in, like, ordinary combat, he just made me want... like, playing as 9S made me want to avoid combat altogether.
I also liked 9S as a boss. Using his hacking minigame as a way to, like, break up the monotony of the combat of that final fight was, I thought, a really interesting, cool, and thematic use of that. But yeah, in overworld travel, and in your average, everyday, like, side quest fight... it's not particularly interesting. Although, I did one thing that I think overall made combat a bit more interesting for me, and that I learned later is just, I think, in part what hard mode is, which is I stopped using the lock-on feature.
Oh, yeah. Hard mode turns off the lock-on.
Because I noticed that when you lock on to enemies that are far away, there's a spread to your bullets, and when you don't lock on, there is not. So I just thought it was a fun... small challenge for myself to try and learn how to manually aim the bullets.
Right.
So that seemed like it would make you better at everything long term. And so I had an extra level of engagement of trying to literally aim what I was firing as 9S while I was doing all the other stuff. And that was enough for me to not really devolve into it. If all I was doing was what I was doing during the 2B playthrough, where I'm mostly just trying to execute combos and then had the combos taken away from me, then there just wouldn't have been enough there for me to even go through as many side quests as I did.
I've never been somebody that's, like, gotten a lot of enjoyment out of, like, performing combos in a game. So, like, it mostly just kind of felt the same to play as 9S for me. Instead of, like, switching between 2 buttons, I'm now just mashing 1. But I guess it was a little bit less satisfying to play as him, but like in the combat, but I think the game itself outside of the combat is more enjoyable as 9S because I think the side quests made more sense from 9S's perspective, and also it feels the most satisfying to play as him because he has the most understanding of what's happening.
Sure. I think from a narrative perspective, you're spot on. I think that 9S as, like, a character from the beginning of the game to the end is the one that makes the most, like, narrative consistent sense. And is generally, like, I'm really glad that the dude is in the game. And the hacking minigames are actually fun the first couple of times, but eventually you're like, oh, this one again, cool. I just stopped caring. Like,
really?
Eventually, like, I lost them so infrequently that it was just going... It made combat really, really trivial.
Yeah, and it is... all jokes at Chad's expense aside, like, it does take a lot of time to jump in and out of the hacking minigame every time you want to attack a different enemy. Mm-hmm. Like, it does get super tedious.
Though I recognize that the hacking minigame was by far the most, like, overall time effective way to do, and I see how it's, if you used it for regular combat, it would get annoying to constantly hit the different screens that you have to go through. Like, the old jokes that seem to be so in vogue now in the, like, in video game discussion space of, like, how much time did you spend watching blank in why video game?
Fuck that shit.
Yeah. I think that's an important... I think that... I feel like it needs to be called out because we have so many things in games now that are just unskippable nonsense that happens all the fucking time.
But there are some instances where it is appropriate to point it out because it is egregious.
Right.
But people... It's like a thing now that people point that out all the time with shit that doesn't matter.
That's fair. Everything in moderation, for sure.
But someone pointed out, like, how much time it takes to load in and out of the shrines in Breath of the Wild. And it's like... That doesn't matter, because it doesn't feel like anything when it's happening.
And because the game, it's such a small percentage of the total game time as a whole.
Yeah, like, people do that shit all the time.
Which is true of the hacking minigame screens as well.
Yeah.
It's a very small percentage of the time. The problem is, even though it takes longer to kill an enemy as 2B, using a cool sword and a cool axe, and you have a good time, it's engaging. Like, if I'm just looking for the shortest time, I buy the game, and I put the game in a garbage can. Because I spent 0 seconds on the game, and look, it was the fastest game ever. I was done with it immediately. But I want to be having an enjoyable experience, and it's fun to fight things with a cool combat system. It's not fun to sit while a screen loads.
And toward that end... While in the same way that I stopped using the lock-on feature after like mid-second playthrough, I also in normal combats where I'm not against like one huge thing, I just didn't use the hack. I like in normal enemies, I just never ever use the hack unless I thought I was going to be hacking an enemy where the hack would be difficult or might let me experience something cool. So like the huge arm guys, for example, and like the feet stompers, I would hack those guys.
I'm sorry, huge... Oh, okay, like the tall, like the Iron Giant guys who do the helicopter thing.
Correct.
Okay,
yeah.
I don't know who the feet stompers are. But...
They're those guys, but they have instead of having big old arms, they got big old feet. And
they switch.
The ones with like the electric...
Yeah,
gotcha.
I would hack stuff of that size, and pretty much nothing else in the overworld.
When you hacked things, though, like, it did like an AoE explosion when they died.
Yeah.
So, like, that was just too tempting to use all the time.
Also, you saw my chipset for the end of the game. That wasn't my 9S chipset, because in the 9S chipset I loaded up on the things that make the hacking deal more damage and persisting damage over time, so the hacking would actually kill things way faster, because I never wanted to spend 2 hacks on one enemy, because it takes a long time.
Yeah.
The problem came in arena fights, because I wasn't fighting things in the overworld anyway. Come on, you know me. I was fighting things like, I killed the big boss, but there's still like 9 robots running around. And you don't want to just sit there and like, with your shitty single light attack that, depending on the weapon, could just be fucking terrible. I don't know. I would rather do, because the hacking thing's faster, but also less engaging.
But you said that you do like that it was the repetition that got you, not the nature of the game itself. You
I thought it was dope as hell.
Yeah, and I liked the amount of variety in it, and I liked how hard they were, at least for me.
See, I thought there was like nowhere near enough variety, and they weren't nearly as challenging as they should have been either.
Maybe I'm just bad at bullet hells.
I thought it was a good variety, but I also didn't think
I feel like you see, it feels like you're seeing the same ones over and over again. And once you've done them like a handful of times, they're just easy.
How... we already established earlier in the cast, you did not get here. How easy was the second tower for you, Chad?
Second tower was the hardest part of the game for me, I think. I mean, depending on, I guess, how you classify it. I never died, obviously.
Let's say, how many times did you have to repeat a single hack in that tower?
It's really... depends. The first 2... Or the first... How many? Are there 3 floors or 4 floors?
Yeah, it's like 3 and 1 floor with nothing on it, which that happened a couple of times in the tower.
Okay.
It was weird, but
So I didn't die on the first one. On the second floor that had 2,
yeah.
I think I lost like once. On the third floor that had 3, I lost like 4 times on the first one I did, and then like 7 or so on the third one I did, and like 1,000,000 times on the second one. It was like, I was so frustrated by the end of that thing, but it felt really good when I did finally beat it.
Of course.
Except I hate the inclusion of like the gray plates, because the gray plates just like eat bullets, and they put more than one of them in front of the little pathways in that one, and that was the one that I had the most trouble with, because the one you go in, you blow up the 2 things, you go out, you skip the middle one because there's nothing there, you go to the third one, you blow up the 3 things, then you go down the stupid hallway with all the gray plates that takes 1,000,000 years to get through, and then you get to the end of it, and then there's a thing that like shoots out some shit, and then you blow that one up. So I kept dying on that one, because all the walls are red, like damaged walls, and I would bounce into the walls. Or sometimes, if I didn't destroy all the plates, which I didn't, because it took a fucking 1,000,000 years to do, I would go to leave, and I would hit the side of the plate, and it would just go like carry me into the wall with momentum, and I would take more damage. And I'd be like, God damn it, and like fucking smash myself into the wall 2 times to start over. And eventually I got through that one. But other than that one, I thought they were pretty okay.
I was using the tower examples as like, I was including them in like the general hacking mini games. Like, I thought, because I only ever played the difficult hacks ever, that even though the game generally was a little bit easier than I would have preferred it to be, it scaled up in difficulty at pretty much exactly the curve that I wanted it to. I'm going to say I succeeded at maybe 75% at all hacks that I attempted in the game, including easy, hard, whatever. And that was exactly the percentage that I kind of wanted it to be at, because everything still felt tense.
Right.
And that's, your experience may differ. This is all relative to your skills at bullet hells, of all things. But I would not have wanted them to be easier or harder. I would have wanted the general overworld encounters to be scaled up to that level. But on this discussion of mechanics, you've mentioned a couple of different times, like just repeating light attacks as this guy. How much did you guys experiment with alternative weapons than the swords?
What do you mean? I used every weapon that I found. I used at least once.
Same with you?
No, at first I got from the blacksmith or whoever, got the Beast Lord
the
great
great sword.
Mm-hmm. And found that it felt bad to me. I didn't like the feel of the heavy weapons very much. So I then, when I found the spear, I used her default katana and the spear for a long time, until I went back to the tutorial area and found the sword that she uses in the tutorial, the big heavy katana, and I used that and the spear the rest of the game. I liked that weapon set. So I did not experiment that much.
I don't think this game had enough variety in the mechanic set of the weapons that you used to justify the experimentation. You have apparently experimented more than any of us in trying to find
it also depends, because you
Yeah.
did all of the side quests, so you probably had, I think my total weapon count was 56% at the end.
I was in the 90s or something.
Okay, yeah. So you also had more weapons. I used every one of that 56% of the weapons.
Yeah.
But you may have just incidentally used more than I have.
The weapons were homogenized, at least from my perspective, enough, not totally, and I'm not claiming they were totally, but to a perspective where I mostly couldn't tell the difference in the middle of a fight what weapon I was using, unless I was using light or heavy attacks.
Right.
The one and only time that I, other than just experimenting and just testing, where I actually used a different weapon more, was by the third chunk of the game in 9S's sections. I used this pair of angelic boxing gloves.
Yeah. The fist weapons are actually pretty fun.
Yeah.
I just felt like they didn't do enough damage to justify using the rare occasions where I'm actually attacking with 9S to use them. So
I found the spear to be the most enjoyable weapon and the most different feeling one to use for me.
What was different from your experience with the spear and the sword?
The spear had a sweet combo where you would like jump up and like throw it into the ground and like spin around it and like use the heavy weapon to like do a cool AoE attack.
Huh.
And it had some stuff like that where you would like dragoon style like jump up in the air and like slam down with the spear.
Yeah. If you didn't find it, there is literally a dragoon spear in the game.
Oh, I did not find it.
Yeah.
I don't know what a dragoon spear is.
One with
God, Chad, you're so inexperienced with JRPGs, you piece of shit.
But
Not knowing what
the
dragoons
one
are.
that you find early on, like in the sewer with like the face on it, was the one that is it called the angelic spear?
It's the virtuous
spear?
contract, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever. The white
one.
version of the cycle of white
Yes.
and black weapons for the spear.
Yeah.
I use that
was my favorite weapon.
The katana that you get in the tower segment. It's called like it has just like a one-word name. I thought was interesting enough as like a piece of lore weapon.
What tower segment?
In I think it's in the hacking tower. As 9S.
You get a sword in the hacking?
Yeah, one of the chests has a katana in it.
Oh yeah, I remember this now.
Yeah. And I liked that one and ended up using it and the like halberd spear as him.
Mm-hmm.
But like the weapons on 9S were mostly decorative for me. I ended up settling on for both 2V and A2 because they have like the same moveset. The old world sword, like the one that looks like a giant knife with the big thing taken out of it, and then just various small swords like the little thing, and then usually on my second weapon set was the machine axe and the one of the spears. And the reason that I bring this up is because really the beauty of it, and one of the reasons I don't like playing as 9S as much, is that you're able to, as the female like combat units, you're able to like switch weapon sets mid. You can do it with 9S, but I'm not fighting as 9S.
Yeah,
you can switch weapon sets like in the middle of the fight.
Right, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
As a D-pad menu system that is designed to allow a lot of variety at moment of play if you want it. But the game never demanded it from me, and I never felt like I was doing much different. So I didn't use the missile pod very much. I didn't set things up so that I had like varying effects for the pod specials. It took me until the third playthrough until I eventually started actually setting up a second weapon set at all on any of the characters. Yeah, like I never felt.
I did it immediately.
Like I understand, like it's there.
Right.
It's something. But when I'm first introduced to the mechanic, I didn't have other weapons to put on it, so I was like, yeah, I'll get back to this later. And then I got other swords that were worse than my default primaries because I'd spent resources to upgrade the default primaries, like that old RPG problem.
Right.
And then once I got to the end game, was the one time where I had like multiple weapons at 4th level. And I experimented and messed around with them a little bit, but like I didn't feel like the spears were that different. I was playing a character where I didn't do a lot of that heavy combos with the different types, so I didn't mix and match. I don't know. I just never really got there with that part of the combat system.
I don't think I leveled a weapon past 2 in this game.
Really?
Yeah, I just never. I stopped going to the blacksmith.
I leveled several things to level 3, but never got anything to level 4.
Right. You have to go to like a special blacksmith.
Yeah.
I did a lot of side quests, and I spent a significant chunk, and actually stopped myself, which I sure will get to at some point, from using the EXP up and drop rate up things. I eventually had to cut myself off from those because I thought they were making the game less fun for me.
The traveling, I think, salesman guy who goes around the city sells those chips, right?
Which chips?
The ones that give you the EXP up and the...
I just found them at first, I think.
Someone sells them eventually.
Yeah, buying a chip in this game is bad, normally.
Yeah.
If you're a nerd who's trying to play it like an RPG and like just optimizing for the stuff that you do.
You saw my chipset. It was the same things at the highest values I could find.
Right.
I did buy a few chips, but not that many.
I did like that, but by that way, since I imagine we're not going to get too much depth out of this discussion, the chipset system is something I like.
I was actually going to mention that because you brought it up as a negative thing right now immediately, where you were like, unless you're some fucking dork who likes to min-max your bullshit.
No. I was being self-deprecating there. The point, because I actually really, really do like because the game doesn't require it at all. It has an automatic chipset button, and you get tons of chips, and the game can decide all of the numbers for you. Mm-hmm. But I really like the system of because, oh god, I don't know. It's hard for me to create a generic summary of the chip system because there's so many knobs in it. Like,
Sure.
There's lots of different differences. Not all of them are just statistical. There are like legitimate differences in kind. You can trade off quality of life, including literal menu functionality, for more combat power if you want to. So there's
Right.
lots of flexibility. The fusion system is nice. The ability, as you get later in the game, to just buy higher level chips is nice. But specifically, the drop system, in that it seems semi-randomized how good of a chip that you'll get. I don't know how much you guys mess with it, but the black chips are like perfect chips,
Right.
and they're like as low of a cost version of that chip that you can get. So I like the ways that you can manipulate fusions, and you had trade-offs. Like, I never found myself in a position all game long where I was just like, okay, this is what I'm going to do forever. My build is done. Because what your build is depending on what resources you random rolled.
Right.
So there's always a chance that you could just like find a strictly better version of whatever you have, which frees up slots in your 128 chipset sets. And now you gotta, now everything's broken open if you've got like 2 more free slots, because now maybe there's like a slightly better version of something you already have.
Yeah, the chipset system in this game is exactly as complex as I think one of these can be, while I still find it engaging.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even the Monster Hunter armor set system was like a little bit much for me, and I ended up using like online resources most of the time to make builds.
Yeah, I did the same thing, but I feel like the Monster Hunter system has the additional inertia of acquiring them. It's so much harder to get them.
It's also the point of the game.
Yeah.
So, like, the armor sets are kind of like the reward in themselves, and you don't want to fuck it up.
Yeah.
The way that I engaged with this is probably about as you would expect. I bought, like, a chip from the guy because I shot the guy running around on the...
Email, yeah.
Yeah. And wanted to see what the fuck he was. Saw that it was a shop where I bought upgrades and stuff. Bought something just to, like, satisfy my, like, I've done this, and then left and never bought any other chips. I may have bought one from Devil and Pablo just for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I ran with the exact same chips for several hours. Then I would stop doing something, save, and go like, I wonder what chips I picked up. And then rearrange my chipset based on that. I was never paying attention to my drops, because I never used items, except for... Well, I stopped even using recoveries after I ended up with the chipset that I finished the first playthrough with, which was like Deadly Heal and Attack Heal, whatever the fuck that's called.
Yeah.
Which basically made me completely invulnerable to all damage.
Yep.
Eventually found like an auto heal, so I didn't even have to spend resources outside of combat.
Yeah.
And then I never pressed the down button on the D-pad again. It was just like a very sort of streamlined setup. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of potential there for cool shit that I just ended up not engaging with because I found the thing that made the game too easy.
Agreed. And that is something that I'm completely behind. That specifically, I think the largest problem is the you heal yourself through damage chip. That one, I feel like the band in which that can be engaging, in which it's not such a tiny amount of healing that it's irrelevant, but also not like a high enough percentage that you just kind of auto heal your HP bar almost immediately before you take damage again. It's very narrow.
This is what we talked about in the Severed episode with their version of the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Did you use that chip?
As it was becoming a theme when we were talking about the mechanics of this game, until the last level of the game, when I was worried about like, okay, now things might be stepping up. I'm going to try and bring my A game here.
Yeah,
I intentionally
your A2 game.
In my A2 game, I intentionally tried to not use it because I knew, even conceptually, before I'd ever used the chip, like this will ruin this game. There's not going to be any point of tension. Although that's like the third level of me not having to try and engage with this game's healing mechanics to make the combat fun. My biggest gripe by far, especially in the early game, being this game so desperately needs like a Kingdom Hearts style you're in battle mode menu control that prevents you from entering the pause screen. The game could do it trivially easy because it doesn't let you pause when you're jumping and doing lots of other contextual actions.
Yeah.
But at any time, if you're just like on the ground not doing anything in the middle of whatever fight, you can pause and heal yourself up to full, and you always have 500 healing things. and there's a chip you can get that makes you auto-heal yourself. And
you don't have to pause the game to heal in battle.
I know, but it's just worse. It's just worse to use the contextual menu.
Oh, I didn't think so, but...
I mean, it takes... think of it like imagine if in Kingdom Hearts, because it's very similar to that menu system, if instead of actually having all the hard boss fights in that game, to scroll down off of your attack button and go to items and then heal yourself, imagine if instead you could hit pause and then do that same thing, where no one moves, you don't have to move your character, nothing's attacking you.
Feels bad.
I know, it feels terrible, but it's easily better. Like, it's just strictly
he means like in the boring statistical way, it is better.
Right. And that's why I just had to not do it.
Right.
And I'm saying, like Kingdom Hearts, this game should have a status where, like you're in combat mode now, and it could have been cool and thematic to the Android stuff. That wouldn't have allowed you to access...
you out of the menu?
Yeah, so you had to use the item system that this game already has on the menu.
Conversely, I also don't think that I wanted to engage with the combat anywhere near as much nearing the end of the game, because I was being so like drawn along by the game's narrative that I wanted combat to just be over as fast as possible, so I could continue like progressing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reason I even asked if you use the offensive heal chips is because they trivialize anything that A2 does. Because you can just, combat, enter Berserk mode, and you'll heal off all the damage that you take from using it, and just, like, slaughter everything instantaneously.
I think this game has versions of healing mechanic chips that work well. I really like the auto-heal chips as a way to force diversity in play, where... you have to, like, if things are going bad, you have to try and heal yourself. You have to make the active decision to, like, disengage from combat. And it doesn't feel so bad because you have all the ranged abilities and stuff.
Right.
And most characters have some way to try and, like, reach out and touch you at that range with the orbs and stuff. Side note, I've missed just fucking big ol' orbs in 3D action games that you try and go through and not get hit by.
I miss projectiles in... games generally, like
slow projectiles.
Like long. Well, that's the thing. Guns in video games nowadays are typically hit scan.
Yeah,
so you don't have time to dodge.
Yeah.
Dodging is engaging and fun. Being shot from somebody you can't see because they pointed a gun nearby you is less fun. It's more fun in a multiplayer game because there's engagement there, and no one has a hit scan weapon that kills you in one hit unless they're really good. But. Yeah, like, I enjoyed playing Doom in the 90s because the fun part was to look at the enemy and then they shoot a thing at you and then you go, whoa, and you run out of the way of the projectile.
Yeah.
So yeah, the orbs are great in this game, I think.
I like the mix of orbs you can and cannot destroy. Because it strikes the right balance, especially since they're almost always mixed, between, like, agency over creating your own escape routes, and also, like, forcing you to escape and not just random fire always.
You should play Fury, by the way.
I know I should play Fury.
Yeah, it's really good.
I feel like
it does this well as well.
Yeah, I will 100% get to there. But yeah, I loved that section of the bullet hell mechanics, and I liked certain elements of the heal chips. The chips that I thought were the most important differences in kind to how you actually experience the game, at least that I found, other than really basic stuff that I think all of us use, like the continuous combo chip that you just buy that never seems to drop any different versions of it.
I've never used it.
Oh, there's a chip that you can use so that you can dodge and still maintain combos.
Yeah.
There's lots of quality of life chips that are good, like auto picking up items and stuff. But by far the most important are the different time slowing chips, the overclock chips, and I forget the name of the other one, but there's one chip that auto slows time whenever you're near bullets.
Yeah. I hate those.
You hate them? Why do you hate them?
Because it slows time.
But you aren't also slowed. I think you're also slowed in the bullet one, but you're not also slowed in overclock.
Oh, I never used overclock because I thought it was going to be like the bullet one.
I thought the same thing. I like the bullet one because, although I understand because of the healing mechanics of this game, getting hit by a bullet isn't that big of a deal. I liked the intentionality of it. I like slowing it down so that it wasn't like a fighting game trying to automatically get through the bullets on instinct, and instead like making intentional choices to weave through these big webs of fuck you. Yeah. Like, that felt really fun to me. But yeah, overclock is fun because it's the time slow mechanic without slowing you down. And I thought the same thing as you for a long time, and then just tried one because I got like a 6th level diamond one that dropped to something and was like, let's see how good this is, and it was really entertaining.
If you recall, someone here said at the beginning of the Super Hot episode, like, did you just try and play this game in real time? That is basically how I feel about games generally. So, yeah, I didn't even think about anything that said slow on it. Mm-hmm. I looked at the things that said fast, quicker,
and
hasten.
I was stunned that you didn't have a move speed chip when I looked at your setup.
I have a second chipset that is just literally all move speed, and the OS chip, like the health bar or whatever, and then everything else is just move speed up that I used if I was just going somewhere.
Okay, good. That makes more sense.
So I didn't engage with the chip system like at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just used the auto sets. And I think this highlights probably, like, at least in my mind, the biggest difference between JJ and I as people. Is that, like, as a child, like, systems like this in video games were, like, super intimidating to me and made me feel stupid. So it's, like, still ingrained in me, like, this habit of, like, I'll try to just skirt along and not pay that much attention to this. Even though, like, now I have plenty of cognitive ability to, like, understand this. Like, I always do that. Like, I won't engage with, like, those kinds of mechanics and systems until, like, a decent way into the game. Like, I'll just try to ignore them out of, like, habit from when I was a kid.
Right.
This is why, offcast, I asked you if using the automatic system was jarring to you, because there are some chips that produce legitimate differences in kind. Like if you used an auto
had no
set,
idea. I don't even know what chips are in the auto chip set. I would hit automatic,
right,
and then just not even look at them.
But like certainly,
I have no idea what chips I have equipped.
But there are some chips that aren't just numerical differences. There are some chips that are like time slows under certain conditions.
That sounds like no fun to me. I kind of. On the Chad side...
No. I am not saying you should engage with the system.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, was it confusing to you, or did the automatic system work in such a way that when you were using it, like, just sometimes time would slow down and you wouldn't know why? Or sometimes your health would start regenerating and you wouldn't know why?
No, I don't... It didn't ever give me any auto chips. I know I had some.
Right.
It didn't ever equip the auto-healing chips or time-slowing chips.
That actually makes sense to me from a design perspective, because if you have somebody who's going to use the automatic chipset just as a way to, like, optimize their normal play of the game, they probably wouldn't want to, like, throw in mechanics and be like, "Rah, here you go." It makes sense that they would just, like, shove those under a rug and be like, you can equip these if you want.
Yeah.
But if you're just asking for automatic, here's your attack ups, here's your movement speed up, evade distance, stuff like that.
Exactly. And then that's why I was interested, because I wanted to know if they had foreseen that eventuality, because it scared me away from using the automatic chipset at all. I only ever used it because I was going to, fiddle with the chips anyway, to see, like, what does the game think is the best thing right now?
I never clicked on it because I was too, like, enamored by the fact that you had to move the pieces yourself.
Moving is such a good decision.
So for some reason, because, like, obviously it means nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you could just do whatever the fuck you want, just hit optimize after each one, and it works like any other meter. But, like, I kept, like, having this, like, thought of, like, moving my herbs and grenades around in Resident Evil 4. So, like, I had like, hit the nostalgic beat for me there, I guess.
Oh, God, that's exactly what this is, isn't it? Yep. But yeah, I'm glad the game didn't overwhelm you with random notable differences in kind.
That's the thing is, it wouldn't have even overwhelmed me. I just have the thought that it's going to, which keeps me from, like... I still haven't gotten over that.
I'm sorry, Andy.
I feel like the only other thing that I have specifically that I wanted to mention was the music, and the fact that the music in this game is, like, took me completely off guard as how good it was.
Yeah.
Especially considering my, like, only real interaction with Platinum is Bayonetta, and my only real interaction with Square Enix is Final Fantasy, and also, like, Kingdom Hearts and things that we've done on this podcast.
Things we have really forced on you really hard.
Kind of. I ended up, like, The World Ends With You, right? It has a good soundtrack, but it's also, like, super baked into the game's aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, Final Fantasy does the thing that you expect of a Final Fantasy game. A Final Fantasy game is, like, a game where they go, what do, like, JRPGs do? Turn all the dials to the maximum. And the music in Final Fantasy is always that, like, orchestral, very epic, like... Everything is like engineered to a T to be like the most like appropriate swells and like loud blasts of music. when necessary in those games because it's like the most iconic RPG franchise. Yeah. Coming into this, I was just like, I don't know, I didn't have any idea what they were going to do. Maybe some like weird like techno EDM stuff. I don't know. I see there's a sexy girl on the cover. That's what I'm expecting. And then when it struck me was when I got to Pascal's Village for the first time. Is because everything felt really natural up to that point. And then there's this like, that fucking song for Pascal's Village is so good. And it just, like, sets the tone perfectly, and, like, the robot voices come in really clear, and I guess, thinking back on it, the opera singing robot probably should have been the first moment that I, like, had an epiphany about the music, but it wasn't, it was this other thing. It was just, and then from that point on, I was paying, like, just strict attention to the music at all times.
You mentioned that before I started the game, that you really liked the music, and for some reason that made me expect that I would disagree with you. I don't know why. I feel like usually when we do a podcast game and someone says they really liked the soundtrack, I feel like it was like unremarkable.
Right.
But that's only when I say it.
Yeah, then I realized it was only when JJ says it.
Yeah.
But like, I totally agree. Like, the soundtrack to this game is like fantastic.
Yes. Like the layering systems that they used for this, which I only really explicitly realized how many layers existed once I started trying to interact with the jukebox. Oh yeah, because that's when it puts it like directly in your face when you get to choose every single layer of the track. I'm like, oh my god, everything's intermixing, and there's so many different types and styles. Do you want vocals? Do you want this part? Do you want this heavier part? Yeah, it hit me hard, but what makes me sad about this, because they chose that fashion, because they made it like a soundtrack that's optimized for a video game, which means you've got to have the soundtrack reacting to what the player is doing and where the player is and make everything like flow smoothly between zone to zone. It's not the kind of thing that I can just like pull up the OST of on YouTube and just listen to.
Right.
Because there's like a billion different versions of everything. And you won't get the flow that exists in the game. So I can't just have the soundtrack listen and produce the same experience that it does when I'm playing the game, which I appreciate for the game, but I don't appreciate for my car. And I want this game to exist in my car.
We haven't like mentioned this at all yet, but the original NieR, like the game that this is like a...
I think it's a direct sequel.
No, it's a direct sequel.
It is? Oh, well, I know even less about it than I thought.
Yeah. This is something I did research.
It's something I actually want to play in the future, so don't spoil anything.
Okay.
But, what I know about NieR makes me very, very clear that I do not want to play it.
That's correct.
But I know that like the bullet hell thing is in the original NieR, like where the enemies shoot the orbs at you and everything. But I've also heard people say that it's got a great soundtrack, and I wonder if it's anything like this game's soundtrack.
Curious as well.
Yeah, it makes sense to me also why you would assume that you might disagree with me, because like if you were talking to like JJ and be like, JJ, what's your favorite video game soundtrack?
Me?
Yeah,
Undertale.
Okay, and then if you were like, Chad, what's your favorite video game soundtrack? I'd be like, probably like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2.
It's like a soundtrack of licensed music. It doesn't count.
Well, because I don't think about, when I think about a video game soundtrack, I rarely am thinking about the game, like songs that are written for the game, unless it's like Zelda.
Yeah.
Which is like iconic, like that kind of a thing. Because that just isn't my style. But this game like stood out to me in a way that was like massive.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, whoa.
The copied city, did you love that part of the game? We were wondering if this was going to fall under your I'm JJ, and I loved the intended grave side of you.
My justification for thinking you wouldn't like it is complete bullshit, so I'm excited to hear whether you like it or not.
It didn't until the last tower, and I loved the last tower sequence. The copied city didn't get enough attention for me to give it what I think it was capable of. I would have loved it
if it was a black void.
Yeah, if it was
a white void instead of a black void. Of course.
Damn it.
Sorry, that was my guess.
When I first came across it, like you just like go down that elevator and the doors open and it's just like this white city, and I was like, "Oh, JJ's gonna love this."
Yeah. And I was very very excited. And then you walk down a hallway and fight one boss and never come back.
Right.
And I'm like, oh man, that's wasted.
I think it was just the equivalent of the planet with the red salt on it from The Last Jedi.
Exactly.
They went there because it was a cool visual. You fought a boss. You fought Kylo Ren.
What I wanted that scene to be was you go into the white area and it's a big room, like all the other big rooms.
Yeah, because it's
like
a big room
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, but it's a hallway. Like I wanted to like.
Did you ever try and go back there?
No.
Maybe there's more.
I did try to go back there, and then a voice on the radio went, "Don't go back there. That's not the right way."
Oh yeah.
I probably could have gone back there if I chose, but I chose to turn around and follow what the pod told me to do.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to fucking find 9S or whatever it was.
No, you did.
That's where I went to get 9S. Never mind, I didn't go back. Fuck that.
You did the right decision by listening to the pod's commands. Because, and I don't know if you guys ever experienced this as one of the possible endings of this game. This game does a weird, I think terrible decision of really rarely, if there's like a narrative reason that you have to do a thing, like if the vehicles show up, if you just go a different direction, you just hit game over and go back to the main menu.
Yeah, you lose all your progress.
It doesn't reload the game like the last and most recent circumstance, like if you fell into the water or something. Like it just boots you to the menu.
Does falling into the water
Yes.
kill you? Are you so bad at platforming that you missed platforms that were the size of a football field?
No. I literally was. You know the section when you're going to the like beach open course, not literally a beach because it's full of
in the
destroyed
flooded
buildings.
city.
Yeah, that's it. The flooded city.
Yeah.
You know that lake to the left as soon as you get there off of the teleporter?
Yes.
I was like, wait, is this lake somewhere I can walk on? And then jumped off.
Okay,
and then I
right.
just died.
Okay.
And then like a pod dropped me off Mario Kart style.
Yeah, I was mostly just clowning that you were bad at platforming, that you missed those huge platforms.
We actually somehow didn't touch on the 26 plus endings.
Yeah. I guess that's a legacy thing from NieR. Like,
No,
they
I
also
didn't know
had a
that.
bunch of endings, but
All of his games have a billion endings.
Yeah.
The Drakengard games did too.
this is such a weird implementation of it, because you do just get booted back to the main menu.
Yeah. What I was wondering what you guys thought of it, because initially I thought it was like cool, like a cool idea, but then so many of them seem to just be like have no substance to them at all that it really like cheapened it for me.
It's like if 60 to 70% of the Chrono Trigger endings were the one where like what is his name fucking Chrono? I don't even know.
Yeah, his name is Chrono.
Yeah, where that guy talks. Do you remember that one where like all the characters get reviewed? There's like one joke ending in Chrono Trigger.
I know of that ending.
Yeah,
we talked about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm also going to splice in the part where we all went like, we're not going to forget the name Chrono. And then right before you're like, what the fuck is his name? His name Chrono?
Whatever. But yeah, it's like this game is like if 70% of the endings were joke endings.
Yeah.
In
like,
the vein of that ending.
I got
Chrono
3
Trigger.
of them just like completely on accident, and it was just like super annoying to have to like jump back into the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly because you got the one where you walk off the crane as 9S.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then have to do the robot thing again.
Yeah, like the beginning of 9S's playthrough, after you do the robot oil thing, he's like, okay, like, time to go, like, meet up with 2B or whatever. And, like, the flight unit is, like, off to the side. And that's what you're supposed to go to. But I didn't see it. And, like, there's just, like, a path in front of you that goes off to the left. So I, like, go forward and go to the left. And there's, like, a terminal. And it's, like, activate terminal. I was like, okay. Like, thinking I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there's literally a button there that
and
didn't
then
have
it,
to
and
be
then, like,
interactable.
lowers the
Yeah.
crane. And then he just, like, runs down it. And it's, like, and 9S was just like, fuck battle. I'm just going to leave. I was like, that's what I was doing? Like, I didn't know.
Yeah, I wanted to fight.
Yeah, like, the ending's called, like, something like...
Not a fighter, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
It's
like, okay.
Which, briefly, just as, like, a point of explanation for my, like, aesthetic, like, how much I love this game aesthetically, that during that robot section, I love doing things that are, like, painfully awkward and slow if it is rare and for comedy. And that was a perfect example of it. Where, like, you go to, like, grab the bucket, and like you're, as the player, sitting there going, "Oh, this guy moves real slow. I hope I don't have to use him for very long." And like you get the bucket, you fill it up, and then you start walking, and you trip, and you drop it, and it has to go all the way back.
That only happens if you don't try to walk around the pipe.
That little pipe on the ground.
But who would? Like
I did.
You just
And he was 100% immersed.
I actually didn't think I didn't think I would trip. I just thought I wouldn't be able to walk over it, so I just walked around.
Well, that's the thing. Part of the trick to that section is that when you first, you can just walk through the pipe just like it's normal. Who cares level geometry?
I jumped over it because he had a fun jump.
Which is the other third layer of this, which is if you jump, you just drop the bucket.
Yeah, I also assumed that would happen.
Yeah. It's so, and like that moment
I saw through their
just,
tricks.
And like that was hysterically funny. Getting that ending and then having to do it again would have immediately made it less funny.
Yeah, it sucked to do it twice.
Yep.
Yeah.
But another thing I wanted to just bring up, just a random thought, nothing substantial, was is it officially a trope now, the return to the tutorial area for some cool nugget of content?
Was that ever not a trope?
I feel like I don't ever remember it being a thing until like recent years. Like, can you name like a PS2 era game that does that or something like that? You know, like a non-current.
Well, for many reasons why I'm the worst person to ask about that. Because why would I remember things about video games?
I'm gonna have like.
I feel like it's something I want to
think about this because I do agree that it feels like it happens more often in recent times, but it's also possible that I've just finished more games now than I did before.
Because like as like a trope, I think I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But I feel like it might totally lose its punch if it becomes too common.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, just a random thought I had in this game when I returned to the factory and found what I presume was an old 2B body with the sword from the tutorial.
It was your tutorial body.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, yeah.
That was pretty sweet.
It was pretty dope.
Yeah.
Do we have final thoughts? I can go first this time if you'd like.
Please do.
Okay. So, yeah, I came into this game expecting to be disappointed, I think, which probably amplified like how much I actually ended up enjoying this game. But this is one of those rare games that I feel like it's been a while since I've played, where I actually felt like at pretty much all times during the day, I was like, I want to be playing this game until I am done with it. Like, it actually drew me in a way that like very few games do. Like Zelda, when I was in the middle of the like actual push to play through the main quests of the game, probably was the last game that did this for me. And which is a testament to the narrative more so than it is the game as a whole, because like I said, I kind of disengaged with the combat system. But yeah, this is, like I said at the beginning, I feel like it's probably Platinum's masterpiece, and I would be absolutely amazed if they managed to make a game that I liked more than this one.
For me, this game taught me... Oh, God, what a fucking horrible thing to say. This is a game...
This game taught me love.
No. Worse than that. Way worse than that. This game taught me why people like anime. Which is the one I've really got to scrub parts of me after stating that segment on the internet. But and that is that this game shows, for good reason, how much you can prioritize tone, setting, and music, like other elements of your design that are supposed to really amp up how the player is supposed to be feeling at any particular moment, over literal like moment-to-moment narrative progression. Like how much it matters more for something to still be hitting the same beats, but not necessarily having those things be things that make like logical sense in a way that like a general audience would understand. Like once you accept that you're playing like a maid who attacks people with swords after and kills a bunch of robots during an alien invasion, but the aliens are dead, and now you're maybe also a robot and the humans are dead. What are you fighting for? Like after you accept all of the nonsense and just get past it to like the themes of like isolation and emotional degradation and existential horror, once you get there it's great because everything works on that level, and everything wants to make you feel like that if you accept the bullshit. And that's probably going to be my takeaway from this game for a long time.
Right.
And it's a little thought nugget that I'm really glad that it gave to me.
I do feel like this game, like, wants that artifice to lay over top of it for a purpose, whereas, like, people who derive enjoyment from watching Kill la Kill have to dig pretty deep to get to the stuff.
Precisely.
Yeah. That's all. It was just my little addendum.
I said earlier that I didn't have like fully formed opinions of like the plot and the narrative and everything, and it's kind of like that for me for the whole game. There's a lot of moving pieces in here. There's some stuff that works like fantastic, other stuff like that's kind of meh. But like overall, like mostly like positive feelings on it. There's like a lot of bits of like modern design and like different ways that they pushed like the meta and like the elements of the game and the subtleness of the narrative, etc., that like are just completely uncharted territory for Platinum, and like not super common in a game like this, and that really stands out. So yeah, overall positive, and I think this is a game that's going to stick with me for a while. So
Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
what are we talking about next time?
Next week, we're talking about Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Do you mean to say next week, or do you mean next time?
I do mean next time. We're not expediting this episode for no reason. Until then, you can get a hold of us at our website at NOCLIPpodcast.com, or if you're feeling a little spicy, head on over to splattershot.pro.
Woo!
Over there you can find old episodes. You can listen to our one on Bayonetta. That'd be pretty rad. It's a lot like this episode, except we trashed it a little bit more. You can find our Twitter, YouTube, email, contact information, stuff like that. As always, don't have an ending for this. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
Cellblade, Twin Swords, Dark Souls, Bloodborne.
From software.
Shadows Die Twice.
It's our vocal exercise at the beginning of the podcast.
Shit.
Dark Souls.
Okay. Dark Souls. Bloodborne. From software. Estes. Alright.